Cool. All right, I will get started. We ran over a little bit. Was everyone on the team meeting? Yeah, okay. We ran over a little bit. We were talking about industry related items with Jared. I don't know if we didn't continue streaming, did we? That whole time? Yeah. So we ran over a little bit. So I'm getting just a little bit of a delayed start. But okay. So today's class is to talk about building a CMA or doing a CMA. So any questions or anything you are hoping I cover that before I get started? Anything that you'd like to ask or mention? And Connie, if you could show your face too, that would be really helpful. It doesn't even matter what you look like or how you're presented or where you are. It just is helpful for me, so I don't feel like I'm totally talking to a blank screen. So I'm looking for questions or any stumbling blocks that you may have had, any practice you've already done, what challenges or questions you have about CMAs that you'd like to make sure that I'd cover.
I know for me personally, I feel like I know at least on the MLS how to do it like with the tech very well, but I think I get stumped with like picking comparables or just like I know like you whittled them down, but even like I tried doing my parents and they live kind of in a rural area. So it's kind of how to, you know, when you don't have the number you should have, or if one has a fireplace and that one doesn't, or like what things are kind of leveled a little bit higher than other things.
Awesome question. Did you all hear that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to start there. Unless, does anyone else have any other questions that you would like addressed or commented on? I'd love to know kind of what you're looking for out of this. It would really help me.
I'm just ready to just look at anything you put out there. I mean, I've been doing this for years, but it's always nice to see if there's another step I should take.
Sure, absolutely. Sounds good. Connie or Joel, either of you have any comments of anything that you'd like out of this?
No, I think the CMA, I'm so new, I don't even know what questions to ask.
Okay.
I'm more of a listener right now than anything else. So wherever you go is fine by me. It's more than I knew when I got in here.
Awesome. Cool. Connie, how about you? Okay. All right. So to address what you're talking about. So with comparative market analysis, you have to come up with a baseline if you are going to start looking at things like fireplace, no fireplace, fenced yard, acreage, an extra bedroom, an extra bathroom, or like a full bathroom versus a 3/4. So the concept of a market analysis, there's multiple different ways of approaching it, just like appraisers do. So appraisers can look at it as like a cost approach, a square footage. There's different approaches that they take. And in real estate, we're kind of the same way. So it's like you pick a way that works for you, and then you kind of stick with it. So if you're looking at outliers, I would call them, like your parents' house in maybe a rural area, that's a much more complex market analysis. And I will just address that in particular. If you have an outlier property that you're trying to create a value for, or like you think you know the value, if you think you know the value and you're confident about it, there's nothing wrong with going out and seeking comps to support your hypothesis for what the value is, if that makes sense. It isn't always just straightforward that the MLS holds the data that will provide the information. And when the more rural you are, the larger the distance that you need to search. The more urban or suburban, for example, the smaller the distance that you're actually going to be searching within. So, and then also the more, I would say like extrapolated or interpreted data. So if you've got a rural area and instead of searching within a mile, you're searching within 10 miles. Can you imagine if you search within 10 miles in like the city of Minneapolis? It'd be way too much information and wrong, but rural, 10 miles would be far more helpful. And then if you have a property that has 5 bedrooms and one that has 3, one that has a fireplace, one that doesn't, those types of factors, you're really more coming up with a range. So what I want everyone to know is the goal of a market analysis isn't, in my opinion, to come up with a decided upon value. I think you should be coming up with a range that the home falls within, and then it's up to you and your experience and looking at the other homes to determine where it falls within that range, if that makes sense. So it's super easy to manipulate the data so that it comes back to support whatever you want it to. That's why I think a market analysis is one piece that gives you a range of value. And then you look at the house when you're there and you determine where it falls within that range. The price per square foot, I don't use price per square foot as my deciding factor of value. You certainly can if you want to be extremely analytical, but the price per square foot isn't created equal across our industry. So I'm not going to get into that too far, but I'm just going to start diving into, and see what we can find on a house. I didn't prepare a house ahead of time. So out of curiosity, is there anyone that has a house that you want me to do an analysis on, either it like urban or suburban? Rural is way too hard and it won't be as good of an example for everyone. But is there any, homes that you own, where you live, neighbors' houses, anything you're curious on coming up with value, an appointment you might have, or that you did have and it didn't work out? Anything like that that you'd like me to use? No? Okay. All right, let's see what we can find.
I just saw a home earlier today.
Okay,
So if you,
sure.
just because that one's like.
Yeah, fresh in your mind. Yeah, what's the address or MLS?
Let me grab it. So the address is 128 Pinewood Circle, Apple Valley.
This one right here? Okay, so I am gonna go ahead and the way that I start a market analysis is I go ahead and I look and see if it was listed on the MLS previously, and I pull it up just like this, okay? That is how I start. If it has not been listed on the MLS, which it's either new construction or built and lived in since original, like pre-1996, I think is how, 95 or 96 is how far back the MLS goes. Very rare you're going to come across a property that doesn't have a listing in the MLS. The reason I try to find a listing in the MLS is it gives me a data point on the map, like a pinpoint on the map, because I start with radius. So I start with radius, and it just kind of helps. It's my starting point. So I go ahead and I highlight the MLS number and I copy it. And then I go into a new search field. I didn't even look anything about that house. I'll get there because I'll go back to it. Well, actually, let me just go back. All right, so this house is, let's just say the sellers of 128 Pinewood Circle call you and say, can you come take a look at my house? We're thinking about selling. So I could ask them questions for sure, and I write down all those notes, but I'm also going to cross-reference with the MLS. And I'm going to go back on and I'm going to say, oh, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a 1-car garage. That's super interesting because how many homes in family homes have a 1-car garage? Not a ton. Built in 66, it's on 0.29 acres. It's a little under 2,000 square feet. That's super interesting. So those are the basics: 321, 0.29 and less than 2,000 square feet for a single family home. So that'll help give me, and the style, that's the other thing that's really important. So the main things that I'm going to look for in starting out a market analysis, the style of home. So if it's a rambler, a 2-story, a multi-level, Secondly, how many bedrooms, how many baths, how many car garage? And then I'm gonna look at the year built, the foundation size, and the finished square footage. Foundation size tells me the potential for the home if all levels are finished, and the finished square footage just tells me what of the home is actually finished. And then the acreage, 0.29. So those are generally the basic pieces of information. As of right now, I'm not going to dive in any further because I don't need to know any other information beyond that. So we've got 1256 foundation, 1986 finish, 0.29 acres. It's a single family, one-story home. So single family Rambler. If you are doing a market analysis, you definitely want to stay within your style and the housing type. So if it's single family, you stay within single family. If you're in townhome, you stay within townhome. And if you're in single family Rambler, you shouldn't compare you shouldn't use comps that are anything other than single family Ramblers, because appraisers won't. And so you can't derive your value off of other homes and other styles. And you can do a neighborhood analysis, which is different than a comparative market analysis. A neighborhood analysis would be going down and pulling up the legal description, which is Apple Valley 3rd edition. That is a way for you to find out the neighborhood, like the plat that was originally created. These homes were all built around the same general time frame, and they'll all have different styles, but that'll give you an idea of what the neighborhood is selling for. And you can apply the same things I'm going to talk about in this analysis with the neighborhood analysis, but you could tell your people your home is worth between 295 and 315, and your neighborhood is selling between 275 and 350. And that's a good data point or piece of information to add, but it's not relevant for the specific value for this home. So we are going to go to a generic search, and the first thing I'm going to do is put in the MLS number into this radius distance. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but underneath map search, you can actually put in an MLS number, which gives me a data point on a map. And I can do within a half mile. You can actually drop down this menu right here. You can get a quarter mile, half mile, 1 mile, 2 mile, all the way up to 50-mile radius. I'm going to start with a half mile. If you don't know the density of an area, pull it up on a map and look and see how many houses you can see around that property, and that'll give you an idea of how big of a radius you want to make. If I'm searching for a townhome, when they're attached to each other, I never use more than a quarter mile radius, because honestly, the neighborhoods are usually not more than a quarter mile radius big. So you might be able to expand to a half mile, but you're looking for properties that have sold nearby to determine your value. You really are. I'm more concerned about nearby Ramblers. I would eventually expand the search into either all of Apple Valley or District 196, for example. But first and foremost, I want to see how close can I get to this house. So density works in your favor when you're doing a market analysis, because you're typically going to be able to find more comps. So I'm just going to start with a half a mile. I'm going to come down and I am going to select single family, and I'm going to select 1 stories, because it's a Rambler 1 story. That's the most, absolutely the most important. I'd like to know what's coming soon, what's active, what's temporary not available for showing, what's pending, and what has sold in the last, and you can see it from my drop down, it says either 100 days or 200 days. I'm going to go with 200 days. In the market that we've been experiencing, the snapshot I'd want to look at would be what's most current. So this is a lot of information I'm going to throw at you guys, and I understand that, and I'm happy to answer questions at any time during, so raise your hand or mention, but I kind of am jumping all over the place because this is a data analysis, and so we have to look at this from a lot of different perspectives, and every house is a little different. So if this was February of next year, and I'm doing a market analysis, in my experience, the data from November and December of the year previous is less relevant to the value in February than it is when you're actually in November and December. Okay. And when you're in November and December, the last 90 days is less relevant because values actually decrease coming into November and December. So if let's just use March, or let's do April of next year. In April, I'm only going to use a 90-day window to look at what's happened since the first of the year. Because we're in November right now, I'm going to look back at the last 3 quarters of a year just to see kind of in general what's happened in the area. So take that into consideration, that the value in January, February is typically higher than the values in November and December of the previous year. So I'm going to use 200 days, so 0 minus 200. And at the bottom, you can see 10 matches pop up. So automatically, I don't even need to whittle down my search any further. In the last 200 days, in a half-mile radius of the subject property, Rambler style homes, 10 properties match. So I'm just going to click on results and not go any further because I want to see what's here. So we can go further, but we're going to start here for now. All right, and look at this. This is like a perfect sampling. There are 2 actives, 3 pendings, and 5 solds. And so just at a glance, you're typically going to want, on average, 3 of each category, because you need at least 3 solds if you can find them. And then you do want some actives to see kind of what they're coming up against. Our subject property is Pinewood Circle, so that actually came up. And what's super interesting is in the half-mile radius, there is actually a neighborhood that's a total outlier. So this is on the border of Apple Valley and Burnsville, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, and so it backs up to Summit Oaks. So Summit Oaks is the 555 properties right there. Those are those are not comps. Just because it's a half-mile radius does not mean that it encompasses everything. You can literally look at the prices: 314, 382, 275, 359, 265, 278, 300. Those are the only ones that are actually applicable. The ones on the bottom, 550 and 555, are automatically like discounted. So I'm just gonna go ahead and refine and then discard. And so what we're left with is 8 properties. And in this particular example, this is a home that's already on the market, has a price. It doesn't mean it's correct. It doesn't mean it's correct. So, but right now I'm going to pretend that I don't have access to interior photos at this part of the process. And I'm going to go into 361 Walnut Lane, which is at 382.9. And wow, that looks really nice. It's got a 2-car garage, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, built a year newer than the subject property, same exact foundation size, and only 1 level finish, 1934 foundation, 1934 finish. So it looks like the basement, it has 0 finished square footage, and the lot size is almost exactly the same. So what I would automatically say is this price is, it was at 393, came down to 382. It's in the same general area, interestingly enough, but you know, it may or may not hold value. It might be the high end of the value. So I'm just looking at it to see if it can stay within the comparisons. And then we've got 3 properties, 1 on Redwood, 1 on Pinewood, and 1 on Ramsdell. So look at these at Redwood and Pinewood. So 112 Redwood pending. It was listed at 275. It pended at 275. We obviously won't know the sold price until it actually closes. And the days on market was 4. So that leads me to believe that it probably sold above that list price. 4 days on market, probably multiple offers, sold quickly. 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-car garage, built 2 years older than the subject property. Foundation size 1330, so it's about the same square footage, about 100 off. And it only has 1,100 finished square feet. I wonder if they included the garage on that. So you'll see inaccuracies or data points that are off. And then the acreage it's about the same. So what I'm already thinking is this home is not below 275. This is probably a really like a bottom end, and this is probably reasonable. Then I'm going to look at the next one. Again, it's 275, pended at 275. It was on the market 4 days. And 321, a lot of the same pieces of information. So I'm going to keep going through. 359, brand new kitchen. Unless my people that I talked to on the phone told me they had a brand new kitchen, I would probably not think that the 382 or the 359 would be reasonable. And then I'm gonna go down to, so Pinewood. One thing I want to mention is Pinewood Circle is in the legal description, Apple Valley 3rd edition. When I go into Redwood, Pinewood, Walnut, those are all street names that correlate to each other. And they're the Apple Valley 3rd edition, so they are part of the same neighborhood. So that's another way to eliminate properties, because when you get into the Ramsdale doesn't sound like a tree at all. And even though it's close, it's Apple Valley 11th edition. So it's probably not a good comparable because it's not in the same general neighborhood. And you'll find that neighborhoods, at least in the South Metro, they do have street names that correlate with each other. So these are all tree names. And so the ones that are coming up, Redwood, Pinewood, Walnut, Elm, those are all really good comps. I can tell you right now that Pinewood is currently listed at 314.9. Redwood and Pinewood both pended at 275, and Walnut and Elm pended at 265 and 278, which is super interesting. And with 1-car garages, Pinewood's for sure overpriced, absolutely overpriced. And, you know, I can look at this data and make some pretty quick assumptions and determinations. But what I will tell you is this data right here is my values are going from 265 to 382. That's almost $100,000 swing, but that's not that unreasonable even at this price point. So the whole point of doing a CMA is to narrow your results down to 30 or less properties. And if you can get down to 12 or less, that's even better. And then when you get down to that number, then you start going through the analysis that I just went through. And I can tell you that all we'd have to do here is click on the properties. I'm going to go ahead and unclick Pinewood because that's actually our subject property. I'm going to go to actions. I'm going to hit CMA. I'm going to do, I thought I had a test. Test. And I'm going to make a client contact here. test@test.com. Save. So we have our client. In the description box, I put the address 218 Pinewood. And I put the address in here. So I know it's saved by the address. Then I'm going to go to pages. I'm going to go to, you can create a cover page if you want to. I'm going to go to my summary list. I'm going to go to my comparable graphs, and I'm going to hit comparables, and then I'm going to hit my map. And those three are the basic 3 components of a CMA that I use. And the only pieces of data that I really need to look at, the static documents are all marketing pieces. The comparables and graphs, so minimum, maximum, you would have to look at them and see if that works for you, if you can speak to them and explain to them. But honestly, the summary list, the comparables, and the map layout are enough for me. The subject property, I still have that MLS number saved in my queue. And so I'm going to fill it in by the MLS number. There we go. And I've got my comparables that came in. So there they are there. The map on top shows me where they are located compared to the comparable property. So that's actually really helpful to show the, if I have this map printed out and I can show my people how close these comps are to their home when I'm meeting with them, that's, you know, versus it being in a whole nother area. I think that's really helpful. And then I'm going to go to finish, and then it auto saves for you. So you do not need to hit the save button, but I'm going to click on view CMA, and I'm going to look at some of this data now and show you why this is enough for me to speak to my clients. So we've got 1 competing property on the market. It's at 361 Walnut. We have 3 pending properties, and then we have 3 sold listings. And the subject property is listed in blue on the summary page. And it summarizes your price per square foot. See this 198, 184, and 199. It shows the price per square foot broken down, categorized individually individually labeled and then also summarized. And then it shows right here that the median price is 278 and the average price is 305. And there's enough information just on this page that you could probably talk about to your client about what the value actually is. And then the next couple pages go through and break down each individual property in comparison to the subject property. And then this is the map, and that's enough information for me. That's all that I need to go through and assess value. Because the reality is once I talk about this page here in a listing presentation, and I talk about, so the solds range between $166 a square foot and $218 a square foot. The average is $199. All the solds are 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. They all have 1-car garage. They're all 1 story. And their prices are between $265 and $300. So if I'm talking to the sellers and they're like, oh, we really want more than 300, I'd be like, well, then let's look at the pictures of all of these comps. And I would go here and I would pop open my comparables and I would click into my Walnut Lane and I would go down here. You can bring your computer, log into their Wi-Fi, or you can print these out, but you go to the picture page, you make it real big on your screen, and then you show them the pictures and go, how does your house compare to this? Does this house look like this?
No,
Is not as nice?
no. They did like some updates, but that looks a bit nicer.
So you're a seller and you're looking at this and you're going, it's irrefutable. My house isn't as nice as this, so I can't price it above this, right? You know, so you go through and you show them these pictures and you're like, that's the deal, is we can't be that hyper. I mean, that's 382. So let's go to Redwood at 275. So open these pictures. So this was 275. Has the right configuration, bed, bath, and garage. Looks pretty original. It did some updated flooring. Is this what it looked like? Or nicer?
They everything but the kitchen. They did like some like small kitchen things, but like everything else fits pretty evenly.
Pretty evenly, okay. So that's how I actually do it. So I get a range from this page right here. 278 to 305 is what my data is showing me. I have not seen the subject property. I have no idea. I'm going in. And if I go in and their house looks like the one on Walnut Lane that's listed at 382, I'm going to have more flexibility with how I actually price that house. But when I was talking about establishing a baseline, you would want to take this 278 to 305 and go, what do you feel like the market is really saying the home is worth? And you've got 265, 278, 275, 275, and 300. So you'd be like, you know, in general, the market's saying right around 275. And if it's got, or let's just say it's 290, right in the middle. So you got 290 with a fireplace, without a fireplace, with a this, without a that. And so you have to create a baseline and then you start adding and subtracting. I don't use that method. I look at the house overall and I look within the range, the 278 to 305. And then I say where I think my property should be in comparison. Now, what's good in this scenario for this property is there's nothing in competition to this property. So we don't have to price to beat the competition. But I will say that if you want to list a home and be successful in the sale expeditiously and price wise, you're going to want to price under 278. So if I was meeting with these sellers and I looked at this range, because they could, if you listed at 278, do you think it's unreasonable for the home to sell at 315 or more? Anyone? I don't think it's unreasonable, not with where her market's been, right? 10% would be 30,000. So, and we've easily been selling 10% over list price. You want to get as many people in the door as possible. And this is literally my listing sales pitch. You want to get as many people in the door as possible. And that's my goal. The list price does not indicate what it'll sell for. So we do not have to list at a certain point to say that this is, you're going to accept this offer. We have to list to get as many people in the door as possible, view the home and get us feedback and get as many offers as possible. And if they're like, well, we want 325, and then I'd say, well, then we can't list over 299. It's total opposite philosophy, but it will work to your favor to underprice the home if they want more for it. Because then you create a competitive environment, more people interested, more people aware. All right, so that kind of went all the way through. I jumped through the market analysis really fast. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump back to the market analysis portion or process and actually look and see. I will find a, give me 1 second. Any other properties you want me to do an analysis on that you guys have seen recently, or that I can use a real example? Because I can do this all day long really easily, and I would rather you guys give me some actual properties that you would like me to use.
Now, you haven't determined whether in foreclosure or not, like distressed or not distressed in your search, correct?
You mean eliminated them or not?
Yeah,
No, I didn't. I just included everything that was there.
okay.
We are going to be coming up on that,
Mhm.
but for the time being, I would recommend that you put all available comparables in, because here's what I'll tell you. You could talk to the sellers and they could say, you know, the home's in nice condition, you know, it's fine. And you get there and you'd call it distressed, if that makes sense. So you want to have all, unless you see the house first and then go back and do the analysis, that would be the only way that you would really fine tune your comps, is if you've already seen the house. If you haven't seen the house, my recommendation to you is that you're creating a range. And from that range, then you are going to go and look at the house and see where your property falls within that range. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna pick a house I sold a while ago, because it doesn't sound like anyone else has a property that they'd like me to do. Okay, so I sold this one in 2013. And it sold for $225. It was listed at $249.9, and wow. Oh, it was at $249.9, came down to $239.9. I sold it for $225, and they financed in $6,000 in closing costs. So this is the property. So the sellers call me and say, you know, we want you to come look at the house and figure out what it's worth. So it looks like they've got some horrible pictures. Don't take pictures with an iPhone, and don't take pictures with an iPhone with a dirty lens. Not just an iPhone, a cell phone. Looks like some newer carpet back in the day. 2013 is almost 10 years ago. You know, I mean, it's 8 years ago. So some nice staging, can't see much. Here's a tip. This picture right here, what part of the house are they selling? Please do not take pictures of staging. Why would you take pictures of staging? Staging, you're not selling staging, you're selling the house. This is the silliest picture ever. You want to take pictures of the rooms that you're going to sell in the house, not the stuff that's in it. All right, so just gives us a general idea of the house, the layout. Long Lake is nearby. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to this property. I'm gonna highlight the MLS number, and then we're gonna grab some data. If you were all on a computer, I'd have you run this practice yourself and try it, which we could do another time if you guys want to do some case studies. I'm happy to build some case studies and show you how to do it and practice it yourself. So we've got Everest Avenue is the property address. I'm highlighting the MLS number. We've got a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-car garage built in 1977. Rambler style home, 1-story home, 1473 finished and 2673, I'm sorry, 1473 foundation, 2673 finish on 0.25 acres. 532, 77, 1473, and 2673. We looked at some pictures. We have a general idea. We can see it's not far off of McAndrews and Johnny Cake and Diamond Path in Apple Valley. The name of the neighborhood is actually not listed here. Horrible, horrible, horrible job by Mr.
Meadowlark
Ryan
Glen,
Brewster. What?
Meadowlark Glen,
Meadowlark Glen?
yeah,
That's the name of the neighborhood?
yep.
Yep. So this, when I talk about errors in the MLS, if you look at the legal description, 3.7, I know what that means, but that is a huge error on behalf of the listing agent. It should say the name of the neighborhood, lot 3, block 7. So it's unfortunate that that's the case. But anyways, so let's do a search knowing that information. All right, so we're gonna do within, I'll do a half mile of that MLS number. And then we're gonna do coming soon, active, TNAS, pending, sold. And again, I'm gonna do 0 - 200 days. And I'm gonna do a single family. And I'm gonna do 1 story. And this is crazy. This is making this way too easy, but essentially 4 properties sold in the last 200 days between 315 and, no, 132nd is probably, is that, what neighborhood is that in? No, not, wrong neighborhood. That backs up to Diamond Lake. White Oak, yeah, it's in White Oak, so that wouldn't even be a comp. So quickly, I can see that I need to eliminate 132nd Street, refine and discard. So not fair, you're cooking food right now. I'm so hungry. Oh my gosh.
Just trying to warm up the room.
It's cold in here.
Yes.
It's cold in here. So Evelyn Path is in the same neighborhood. It's a little bit different style of home, but they were listed at 369.9. They came down to 354.9 before they pended. 322, 1977. So same year built, 2 less bedrooms. Looks like it's got 600 less square feet. General idea of, so 354. That is a general idea of pricing. Another Rambler was listed at 319.9, sold for 315. On Evelyn, 322.76. Got a lot less square footage than the subject property. The subject property had almost 2,700 finished square feet, if we remember. And then the third one is not a comparable at all whatsoever. So it's a 3-car garage. It's a totally different style. I know it's a 1-story, but it was built in 2000. Just 2000. So it's, that's an outlier. I would not use this property as a comparable to the other one. So what I'm going to do is, that only leaves me with 2, which is way too little. So I'm going to go back to actions. I'm going to go to criteria, and I'm going to refine my search a little bit. So I'm going to actually expand out 1 mile, and that gives me 11 properties. So it's going to add some back in that were there before. And that gives me a better idea. So we've got Flagstaff. Yeah, that could work. Generally looks like our house, right? The subject property generally looks like the subject property. Generally does. Have no, oh, that one would be eliminated. So I'm gonna highlight that to eliminate it. Ferris Court, yeah, that generally looks like it. Generally. And this one does not either. Okay, so that brings us to, what is this one? 390 Finlay Avenue. I got to see the pictures on this, because all I'm trying to do is narrow it down, because I haven't seen what the house looks like. Yep, that generally looks like it, so that can stay. All I'm looking for is a range, so I'm just trying to repeat my actions to get a range of value, because you never know what it's going to be like once you get into the house. Is this the house? This seriously might be the house. No, it's not. The wall is there. Okay. So then I go back into my single line. I'm going to eliminate the 2 that are definite outliers. They're not included. So I'm going to go discard. And then I've got 2 pending and the rest sold. So I've got 7 sold and 2 pending. I'm going to click on the select all. I'm going to go to actions. I'm going to hit CMA. And I'm gonna do test again. Test, and test. I don't remember what the property address was, but I'm gonna go to pages and I'm gonna select. Do you guys remember? You remember what I said I was gonna select?
I wrote it down.
Okay, so what did I say?
Summary list.
Summary list,
comparable,
comparables,
And CMA layout.
CMA map layout. Map layout, yep. And then the subject property. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my MLS number that I copied and put it in there. So it can autofill so I can see what I'm comparing against. And then I'm gonna go to the map and just kind of get a quick preview of what it looks like. So it's not even, there's 2 in the neighborhood and 2 outside of the neighborhood, but they're not too far away. It would have been nicer to get a few more in the neighborhood, but there's less comps to choose from. Then I'm gonna go to finish. And then I'm gonna hit view CMA. And again, I'm looking at my CMA and it just gives me the 3 basic pieces. So my range is 354. I'm sorry, the median price is 354, my average is 351. And it looks like the range is anywhere between about 300 and 400. So this is a great start for a comparable because my comparable has 5 bedrooms. None of my comps have 5 bedrooms. So I know automatically this house is starting off to have more bedrooms and baths. So it's going to be, as long as it's as nice or nicer than the rest of the homes that are in my list here, it's going to be able to be priced higher. It's got 2,600 square feet, which is on the bigger side of the comp. So there's another one I see there that was on 132nd at 330. There's one at 2832 at 390 and 2676 at 390. So it just gives me a good idea. So I would feel very confident going into this property on Everest Avenue and looking at it and going, I could end up anywhere between 300 and 400. And then again, what I do is when I get there, I go back and I go into my comparables and I click on the actual properties that are in my comps and I start pulling up pictures and see where they end up to determine pricing. Again, I don't go visit houses and then do the analysis. I do the analysis ahead of time and then go there and help determine value. If it's a home that does not have any MLS information and I can't find any pictures or info or anything, or it's a unique scenario where they remodeled or they rebuilt or they did a bunch of work, then I'll go first and do the analysis later. But that's essentially the basics. I'm gonna actually try to find. So the next level of searching is, so when I talked about doing coming soon active, TNAS pending sold within a certain number of days, you know, radius is going to be really important. And then the style is really important. I've had it super easy so far that it's been able to come narrow down so quickly. In higher priced homes, especially 2 stories, I just want to add the little tidbit. Using foundation size would be the next place that I would go. Because you're going to find there's a lot of 2 stories to compare amongst. And then I would also use year built because a lot of the new construction is 2-story. So I would eliminate new construction, or I would make my range within, I don't know, I'd probably put like 2,000 minus for an older 2-story. And then I would do foundation size. And I use foundation size. I do not use finished square footage. I use foundation size because it speaks to the potential of the home, because there are 2 stories that have unfinished basements. And you would rather have a home that has a similar footprint, if you will, than a home that is a totally different footprint. Let's say super small, 1,000 square feet, but then all 3 levels are finished, versus a 1,500 square foot foundation, which those houses don't feel the same at all. 500 square feet difference in foundation is a lot. So I use foundation size, not finished square footage. I don't pay attention to garages, bedrooms, and baths until I start refining my price. But just to pull a CMA and to do a CMA, those are the general, that's the general framework that I actually use. So I could do another one if you want me to run through the exercise again, or we can have discussion, talk through. I'm open to either scenario. So looking for feedback.
I mean, what you talked about answered all the things I had. So I don't know. It was really good. I don't really have any questions as of now. So
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel online? You're good? Okay. Well then, if nobody else has anything that they'd like to ask or request or discuss, then I'll just wrap it up there. Okay, sounds good. If you guys want more of this or to do case studies or anything like that, don't hesitate to let me know, because I'll pull that together and you guys could run it. We could like work through it. I used to be Lisa. I was a productivity coach at one point. And so that's what I used to do. I actually used to run a contest with my productivity program, and I would give an address, and then my coaching group had to come back and give me the price. And we talk about why people ended up with the price. So I kind of made a competition out of it. So I will tell you, I learned that the people that were my coaching program, they benefited from practicing market analysis. So like for you with that house you saw today, any house you see, do an analysis on. Every time you see a house, do an analysis and see. And that can even improve your ability to get feedback, because you can talk about the market and you just intrinsically start learning the value of homes in our area, the features and the benefits and the value. So I would run practice CMAs on a regular basis. And don't be afraid to ask any other agent to run an analysis and see what they come up with. And just as to validate you, to see if you're right or in line. So that's all I got. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Yay, that was fun.
I think so.
Yeah, definitely.
It was nice to go to that one today because I walked in and I thought it was a little bit overpriced. So it was.
One car garage over 300,000, insane. I mean, it would have had to have all the bells and whistles to really justify that price. So you were right on. I mean, your gut feeling was right on.
Yeah, I'm my husband and I, we got married like 2 months ago, still relatively young. And so we're still in an apartment, and so like we're going off and we're like looking at our own homes now, which is kind of fun.
Yeah,
So yeah, that was one that I actually saw earlier today for that.
really. Why can't I shut it down? Oh. And